The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
Where strange lights speed beyond reason across a clear night sky.
The house at the end of the road where disembodied voices whisper and strange noises make the living shiver.
Lurking shadows hiding on the edge of the woods just outside your back door.
Odd, true events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole. I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Now, I know that our regular listeners know who we are, but if you're new to our podcast, I'm Wes, and that's my wife and co-host, Beth.
Hello, everyone. So we wanted to say to the handful of people who just started following us on Facebook, we noticed and we thank you for that.
Yes, we did.
And to those of you who have purchased things from our brand new merch store on TeePublic, we noticed and we thank you for that too. And to everyone who is tuning into our episodes, we thank you for that too.
Yeah, thank you for continuing listening to us. And, for those who made purchases on TeePublic, thank you for those too. It really helps us out a lot.
We greatly appreciate it.
So there's been some interesting archaeological discoveries that have been made recently. So I'm kind of excited to do an upcoming episode on some of them pretty soon.
Yes, there have been. And I'm in the process of actually editing them for part of an episode in the near future.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So what are you going to talk about tonight?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about some mysterious balls.
Okay. Is that code for Sherlock Holmes' lesser known body parts?
No. I think if there's any mystery about Sherlock's balls, that they should indeed remain a mystery.
Maybe so.
But now that you mentioned it, I really missed the Sherlock Holmes series that was on Netflix. It was so good.
It was really good.
So last night we watched the new Enola Holmes 2 movie on Netflix. And Enola Holmes is Sherlock's younger sister. And it's Millie Bobby Brown who plays 11 on Stranger Things, starring as Enola Holmes. And she was fantastic. This movie was so good. I highly recommend you check it out.
It was really good. But I'm guessing that since you said it has nothing to do with Sherlock Holmes, that the mysterious balls are something else entirely?
Yes. So let's get back to it. I'm talking about Neolithic carved stone balls. And the reason I'm talking about them is because no one knows what they were used for. So we're going to take a little trip to Skara Brae. It's a Neolithic site located on the Bay of Skale. It's situated on the west coast of the mainland, which is the largest island in the Orkney archipelago of Scotland. It's Europe's most complete Neolithic village. It was occupied by around 50 people from 3180 BC to about 2500 BC, which makes it older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So Skara Brae was discovered in 1850 when a massive storm battered the coast, and the village that had been completely overgrown and seemingly lost to the world was now revealed. The site is made up of 10 houses, each 430 square feet, made of flagstones. Inside the houses have hearths, beds, dressers, cupboards, and storage boxes, all completely made of stone. The storage boxes were formed from thin slabs of rock and sealed with clay to make them waterproof, suggesting that they may have been used to hold fish or the bait they fished with. The setup of most of the houses is identical. You would enter through a slab stone doorway, which could be blocked by a bar across it, and many of them had little antechambers that served as the outhouse. The little privies even had sewer drains, which carried waste out to the ocean, so they'd flush their indoor toilets by pouring water down these drains.
So these ancient people were pretty ingenious for their time.
Yeah, they were. When you enter most of the houses, the dresser stands against the walls opposite the doorway. On the right side of the doorway is a large bed, and a smaller one is on the left. It's believed that the smaller bed was meant for the lady of the house, since beads and paint pots were found on some of them. Stone boxes are placed to the left of the door as well, forcing those to enter to kind of turn to the right, which was considered the male side of the house. At the front of each bed are remnants of stone pillars, which may have held fir canopies. Archaeologists also found the earliest known evidence of fleas in Europe at Skara Brae.
Oh, wow.
House 8, though, is different from all the others. There are no storage boxes or dressers, and the building seems to be divided into cubicles. Some of the stone shows heat damage, and because fragments of stone, bone, and antler were found inside, it may have been used as a place to make flint tools. So its walls are over 6.6 feet thick and has sort of a porch protecting the entrance. The people of Skara Brae raised cattle and sheep, and in 1972, archaeologists unearthed seed grains that suggest that they cultivated barley. They also made grooved ware, a type of pottery that is distinctive to northern Scotland. So I looked up groove ware because I wanted to see what it looked like. It isn't as fancy as it sounds. It's basically very simple pots with shallow lines etched into it, which is kind of important later on in the story. Now, here's why I gave you all that information about what has been found at Skara Brae, because also among the findings were 5 ornately carved stone balls. And when I say ornate, I mean ornate, far more ornate than any of the grooved ware pictures I looked at. Since the discovery of the 5 mysterious balls at Skara Brae, over 500 have been found in and around other Neolithic sites, mostly in Scotland as recently as September 2021. The 2 found there were in Chambered Cairn on the Orkney island of Sanday. They are 5,500 years old and perfectly polished. One was the size of a cricket ball.
But they have no idea what they were used for.
They have no clue what they were used for, but there are some theories which I will get into in a little bit.
Well, that's good because I love theories.
So each one of these balls is roughly the size of a tennis ball or a baseball, fitting easily in one hand. Neolithic people at this point only had flint tools. So what makes these stone balls so remarkable is that most of them are so intricately and deeply carved that a number of the knobs protrude from the surface. Each one is distinctively different. No 2 are alike, and that's what makes figuring out what they were used for so difficult. One theory is that the balls were used in various gatherings or ceremonies, and that perhaps oracles rolled them to predict the future.
But I thought you said that each one is totally unique, right?
That I did.
So if this was a usual practice used by oracles across Neolithic sites, then there should be some similarities in the symbols on them.
That should hold true, yes, which is why some historians say that they couldn't have been used for that.
Aha, I helped figure it out.
Yep, your regular Sherlock Holmes.
Enola, thank you.
Oh, that's right, Enola. Another theory is that they were used as weapons. Some historians thought perhaps twine was wrapped around the protruding portions of the balls and that they were flung like a slingshot.
Sorry. I just had a visual in my head.
Sometimes you are so childish.
Okay, I'm fine. Continue.
Now, you sure?
Yep.
We done?
Yep.
Okay. Others thought perhaps they were tied to handles and used as cudgels. So, of course, I had to look up cudgels because I had never heard the term before. So basically, they are described as short, heavy weapons, kind of like a mace. But again, several historians disagree with this theory, also because they point out that none of the stone balls are chipped, and why would so much time and effort have been put into a weapon that could have so easily been lost or cracked? Another theory is that the balls were used as weights. However, since they are not all the same size, and trading in those days was not typically done by weight, this theory can't be proven either. Several of them have been 3D scanned in the recent years by National Museum Scotland, and the scans revealed things that had gone previously unnoticed for over 100 years, like one example where perfectly concentric lines circle the sphere. The 3D images showed something else, that some of the stones were modified over several years, that either one carver or multiple carvers reworked the designs during different time periods.
That's cool.
It's very cool. Which leads me to one last theory, which I find really compelling. I came across an article by Jeff Nesbitt titled, "The Carved Stone Balls of Scotland, Who Made Them and Why?" published in 2014. So now in this article, he proposes that the balls were practice spheres for budding stonemasons as a way for them to hone their skills, and that they may have even been presented as a portfolio of sorts for their abilities. In this article, Nesbitt compares them to Roman dodecahedrons, similar spheres made of copper alloy from the 2nd to the 4th century. When you look up the images of the two side by side, they are strikingly similar. So the kicker is that historians don't agree on what the dodecahedra were used for either. The dodecahedrons are made of metal, but their expertly welded sides have knobs and protrusions similar to the balls of Skara Brae. I find them quite fascinating, and when you have the time, I think it's something everyone might want to Google and check out for themselves, because they're pretty peculiar looking.
Yeah, I've seen them before. They're really cool.
And you really need to get a visual of them for yourselves. The first one was found in 1739, and since then, at least 116 more have been discovered all over Europe, but most often in Germany and France. They're actually really cool looking as Skara Brae balls, but for different reasons. The balls are carved from one piece of solid stone, while the dodecahedrons are welded together in perfect angles. The balls are solid, whereas the dodecahedra have holes and other cutouts in their sides. Historians are also split on what the dodecahedra were used for. Some say they were ornate candlestick holders since wax was found inside 2 examples. Other theories center around gaming, that the dodecahedrons were used as dice. Then again, several dodecahedra were mixed up with coins, and archaeologists suggest that's because they were used to detect counterfeit money. If a coin didn't fit perfectly inside one of the round holes in the dodecahedron, it was fake. They also could have been used during warfare as a way to calculate the trajectory of projectiles, somehow using the cutouts in the sides to take measurements. Regardless, the evidence is there that ancient cultures liked making really cool stuff.
They really did. They have some cool stuff.
Well, I personally love the idea that the Skara Brae balls were used as a portfolio of a craftsman's talents. Regardless, they're both just freaking cool.
They really, really are. When you were researching, you didn't find any theories that the Skara Brae balls or the dodecahedrons were gifts from ancient aliens that would reveal the secrets of the universe?
No, nothing in my research was there any mention of ancient alien involvement. Although I'm surprised I didn't see any of it out there on the internet.
I thought you might.
But I believe that the ancients were just as intelligent, imaginative, and creative as we are today. Perhaps, more given what tools they were working with at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Their architectural feats alone are mind-boggling. But I certainly wouldn't rule out like there was some kind of worldly intervention because I can't prove or disprove it. And I believe one has to keep an open mind.
All right. Maybe there were ancient aliens involved then. But, I think it's really cool when we find things that they just don't fit into those neat little boxes of how we think people in the past lived or how things were supposed to go. And it's just a cool little reminder to all of us, I think, that we don't know everything. And the people of the past were capable of much more than we sometimes give them credit for.
Yeah, we most certainly don't give the ancient people the credit that they deserve when it comes to all the incredible things they accomplished. We think of them as being so Neanderthal.
Mm-hmm.
But they've built stuff that will outlast anything we build today.
That's true.
Well, I definitely think all of you out there need to go just take a glimpse of these balls because you know what I meant.
Sorry, I told you I wouldn't do that anymore.
Well, I would imagine if you Googled mysterious balls, you may want to wipe your browser history. But my sources are in my show notes or in our show notes, so go check them out. I think you'll be very intrigued by them, like I was.
Hey, did you know? Scientists have determined that time really does go by faster as we age. Sort of. We perceive time as passing much more quickly as we age because we have accumulated enough memories and understanding of time to know how much can fit into a single day. As our brains have processed this knowledge, we subconsciously realize that at, say, age 50, 1 year is just 2% of our memories, whereas for a 10-year-old, 1 year makes up 10% of theirs. So, for older people, time really does go by faster. Who'da thunk it?
So, did you find a story for tonight that you thought that could really beat my balls?
Well, believe it or not, I'm actually going to talk about some massive stone objects that are also a mystery. It's a stone mystery tour tonight.
That's pretty peculiar that we both did stories on stones.
Stone stuff.
Yeah.
That's weird how that happens sometimes.
That's a mystery within itself.
It is. We're connected cosmically.
I can't wait to hear your story.
A winged stone horse on top of a massive pile of rock. A snarling dragon in a battle with 2 lions. A reclining bearded man covered in a blanket of moss. A gaping orcus, or hellmouth, with the words, "All reason departs," inscribed over its screaming mouth. These are just some of the more than 30 massive stone sculptures, half buried in foliage, in the Park of Monsters.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It's pretty darn cool.
The Park of Monsters. That's pretty ominous.
The Gardens of Bomarzo in Banzaro, Italy, are about 50 miles north of Rome and were created in the 16th century. But just what the statues mean is still up for debate. Pier Francesco Vincino Orsini, a patron of the arts and the Duke of Banzaro, was born in 1523. He rose to the rank of general in the Pope's army during the Italian Wars and fought in many campaigns. During a battle in Artois, France, his close friend and commander, Orazio Farnese, was killed. Orsini himself was captured and spent several years as a prisoner of war. When he was released, Orsini returned home, only to lose his wife, who was related to Orazio Farnese. In his grief, Orsini distanced himself from religion and turned to the philosophy of Epicureanism, which supports the idea that people should enjoy the simple pleasures in life in order to live life to the fullest. Epicurus believed that death was the end and that heaven and hell didn't exist. He believed that gods didn't really want anything to do with mortals, so there was no use in praying to them or worshiping them. Orsini fully adopted the philosophy and surrounded himself with creative people, including writers and artists. Now, some sources say that Orsini's wife's death didn't happen when he returned home from war, and that claiming he began his unusual garden out of grief may not be accurate. But regardless, he did want to shock people. In 1552, he and Piero Ligorio, the papal architect and Renaissance gardener, began planning his garden. Piero Ligorio was highly respected. He had just finished the Cathedral of St. Peter's in Rome, after all, and the Villa d'Este in Tivoli. So at first glance, this pairing seems rather odd, not something Ligorio's boss, the Pope, would approve of.
Right.
But Ligorio was also fascinated by the grotesque. As historian John A. Gear says in his study in Master Drawings, some of Ligorio's drawings show, quote, monstrous hands clumsily attached to the arms by grotesquely malformed wrists, end quote. According to a study published in the Journal of the Warburg and Courtauld Institutes, Ligorio had his own ideas of what monstrous mythical creatures, such as sirens, giants, and dragons, should look like. He was pretty annoyed by the way Renaissance artists depicted them. He thought they made them seem too human. The norm for gardens at that time, perfect symmetry, perfect hedgerows, ornate fountains, and depictions of Roman gods, was just not what Orsini had in mind at all. Instead, Orsini left the native trees and shrubs exactly where they were, and his statues, scattered in an almost random fashion, were nothing like the ones people were accustomed to. A mashup of Etruscan, distorted myth, grotesques, and an early version of surrealism, his vision was completely unconventional.
So it sounds to me like it'd be a perfect place to hang out, have some beers, perhaps a picnic. I can imagine laying under the stars or a full moon and just looking up at these things. It has to be so cool.
Yeah, especially since there are no manicured rows or paths in the garden. Orsini's monsters just rise up out of the rock cliffs, and they're at the base of gnarled trees like they've just been there since the beginning of time.
Wow.
So the statues are so unconventional that even to this day, art historians and everyday visitors alike need the inscriptions on the statues to even begin to understand what they are seeing. There is a war elephant, for example, and a monstrous fish head. There's a giant tearing another giant in half, and a house built on a tilt to disorient the viewer.
That sounds so cool.
I know.
I like this guy.
Because Orsini was incredibly cultured and surrounded himself with other creators, he had a pretty vast knowledge to base his monsters on. For example, there is a winged Pegasus and a three-headed Cerberus, as well as massive mermaids or sirens. There is some thought that his creatures, some at least, were inspired by literature like Dante's Inferno, and yet some of the statues appear almost funerary, with wings or snake-like features, as if they are based on Etruscan tombs. Orsini was fascinated by antiquities, as was Piero Ligorio, so some historians wonder if each statue represents a long-lost people or culture. But perhaps the most well-known piece in the garden is an enormous head with its mouth open wide, almost as if it is screaming. It kind of looks like a Medusa, but it's known as the Orcus, and it beckons the explorer to enter its dark mouth while warning one not to. The funny thing is, you're actually meant to eat your lunch inside that mouth at a picnic table, and the inscription above the Orcus says, "All reason departs."
Wow. I wish there was something like that here.
I know.
The most, maybe you can go to one of the amusement parks and stand inside the mouth of a giant plastic whale, and get a pic.
Yeah.
I'd much rather go here.
Many of the sculptures in the gardens of Bomarzo are often thought to be visual representations of Orsini's grief. For example, the massive elephant of war statue, Elefante, which balances a brick tower on its back and carries a life-sized figure of a man in its curled trunk.
Elefante?
Elefante.
That's cool.
I think that's Italian for elephant. Elefante.
Okay, just never mind.
Historian Lynette Bosch in the journal Garden History believes that the symbolism of the animal carrying a corpse in his trunk relates to the death of Orsini's friend Farnese, while the tower on the animal's back represents his imprisonment. So the mystery still remains, though. not just why Orsini had a park filled with monsters, but also why he chose each one. What exactly did they represent? And did he know his garden would inspire future artists? Like Salvador Dali, who visited the park in 1938 and was so inspired, he shot a short film there. And there is a strong belief that his 1946 painting, The Temptation of St. Anthony, was inspired by the Elefante statue. In the film, which was released in 1948, Dali climbs the statue while an orchestra plays in the background.
Wow. Well, I'd like to find that film.
It'd be interesting to watch, for sure.
Got to be somewhere out there.
Yeah, maybe. We'll have to look for it.
Well, that we will.
Other artists followed, and a novel, libretto, and opera have all been based on the park. Pier Francesco Vincino Orsini never expressed during his lifetime why he commissioned the Garden of Monsters, but I'll leave you with this inscription. Quote, "Thou who enter this garden, be very attentive, and tell me then if these marvels have been created to deceive visitors or for the sake of art." End quote.
I can't believe I've never heard of this place.
I hadn't either until I came across it. I came across a picture of the orcus online and I went, what the heck is that? There's a picnic table inside the mouth. So you're supposed to go eat while you're being eaten.
Oh. Well then, sounds rather kinky.
And I thought, what is this place?
You know, that's what I like about doing the podcast. I mean, we do a lot of research and we find things that take us down rabbit holes that I would have never known about before.
All the weird and wonderful stuff that's out there.
Yeah. Well, I guess that about wraps it up for this episode, all you wanderers.
Yes, please join us next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
Yeah, we'll see you all soon.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment. It really helps us move up the list so people can find us.
See you next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.